If you want to know my thoughts on whether the Rangers should trade for either Luis Castillo or Frankie Montas at the trade deadline, then make sure to stick to the end of the video. So the MLB trade deadline is coming up, and it's no question that the Rangers need starting pitching help. So Jon Gray and Martin Perez have been pretty solid. Danny Dunning has been mediocre, but the bottom two spots have been pretty bad this entire season. So the Rangers will probably be looking to add starting pitching help going into the trade deadline. And the two top arms are Luis Castillo and Frankie Montas. And which one would be better for the Texas Rangers this season, but going forward as well? And both arms will be pretty pricey. Yes, I know Frankie Montas has that injury that he's been dealing with, but he should be ready to pitch at least one more game before the trade deadline. And the reason why both will be pricey is, one, they both pitched really well this year, and Frankie Montas is within the division, and for a trade deadline that doesn't have a lot of great arms, teams are going to want their services, so there's going to be a bidding war. Although first, let's break down Luis Castillo, because without a doubt, he's the top arm on the trade deadline, and I think if we trade for him, this would send signals to the Texas Rangers that we want to compete really soon, and this would we would have to surrender Cole Winn and probably Justin Foskey. That's two of our top prospects, two top 100s. And I wouldn't say this is necessarily trying to compete this year, but we know you're going to try to compete next year in 2023. However, the problem with me is that you could, as a fan, you could say, oh, we can just extend him. Yes, we're giving up Cole Winn, who could be a top front of the line starter, for an ace in Luis Castillo. I really do think he's an ace. But don't you think he's going to want to hit free agency to see what he can get on the open market? Not a lot of times people actually get an extension, so that's my problem. Why give up all those prospects when he could just hit the free agency in 1 year? Is that really how you build a consistent franchise down in Texas for a team that's been rebuilding for almost 5 years? Are we going to really just give up the farm system for a player that can leave really soon? However, this would be comparable to the Cole Hamels deal, as whenever we traded for Cole Hamels, it was for the coming years. However, Cole Hamels did have 1 more year of team control, so that's a little bit different. But also, I think the team was a lot more established. We still had guys from the previous World Series team. And this Texas Rangers team, I mean, we do have some established big leaguers, like obviously Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. Corey Seager was an all-star this year. Marcus Semien's starting to turn it around. We have Nate Lowe, who just looks like an above-average hitter, nothing too special. But I think the wild cards next year are the prospects. So is Josh Smith and Ezekiel Durant, are they going to be ready to be full-time big leaguers next year? Same thing with Josh Young. Are they going to be ready to go? Because if they are, that's a big part of our step for next year to be legitimate contenders. But if they aren't, then that's going to set us back quite a bit. So the Rangers need to think, does it make sense to pull the trigger right now, go super aggressive? Because you could go for lesser players right now. Say you trade for a guy like Brad Keller. He's only 26. He still has the same amount of team control as Luis Castillo and Frankie Montas. He's not an ace. I would say he's better than Danny Dunning, so that gives you a third starter in the rotation. Jon Gray, Martin Perez, Brad Keller, and you also get him for next year as well. Probably a cheap prospect. I would say somebody like Thomas Sagasi and maybe a lower end prospect as well in rookie ball. That gets the deal done probably, because the Royals are like 30 games under 500. And then I think you could also sign somebody in free agency like Jameson Taillon. I know that rotation doesn't sound sexy at all, but Jon Gray, who I think is going to be our next turnaround story. I know it's been Martin Perez this year, but if Jon Gray has been healthy this entire year, he probably wouldn't have made it to the All-Star game. So we got Jon Gray, and obviously if we extend Martin Perez, Jameson Taillon, Brad Keller, Danny Dunning, that's not a bad rotation. And yes, the aces are awesome, like Carlos Rendon, like Luis Castillo, but those are going to be expensive. I think it's better that the Rangers diversify their money and make a more well-balanced team. So yes, I think Carlos Rendon is an ace, and he's going to get the bag next year. But would you want the Rangers to spend $30 million on one player in Carlos Rendon, or say you could get 2 more Jon Gray type pitchers for $15 million a piece? So you get like Jameson Taillon and maybe Noah Syndergaard. People may have different thoughts on that, but I'd rather build a more balanced team, because obviously Carlos Rendon has those injuries, and same thing with Luis Castillo. If we're giving up those prospects, then how are we going to have a consistent winner down in Texas if he could just leave the very next year? I still don't think we would have a balanced team at that point. I think if you trade for somebody like Castillo, that needs to be like a cherry on top, kind of like if you were to trade for Juan Soto. And honestly, I think the Texas Rangers have at least 1 or 2 aces in their farm system. The likes of Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker, Brock Porter, Owen White, and Cohen. There has to be an ace in one of those 5 pitchers. And moving on to Frankie Montas. In the division, I don't think he would necessarily cost as much as Luis Castillo, who, like I said, would probably cost us Cohen, probably cost us Justin Foscue, and also some lower end prospects as well, probably Sam Huff, probably maybe a Trevor Hauer type of player. I think Frankie Montas would probably be like Sam Huff, Leody Taveras, and maybe Justin Foscue, so not as much, but he's still in the division, and you'd still have competition for him. That's if his arm is going to be healthy, but still the same situation. He could walk in free agency. But what do the Rangers really need most? Yes, they need starters, but starters that can just give them innings, and it won't necessarily kill the bullpen, because right now Spencer Howard is going 4 innings, Glenn Otto is going 5-ish innings, and the bullpen is getting killed. And guys like Dennis Santana, who I think is a good arm in the bullpen, is just getting fatigued, and his 1.9 ERA has inflated all the way into the 4s. So would it be cool to get a Frankie Montas or Luis Castillo? Yes. And if you were to extend them, I'd be okay with that. But why not just wait until free agency to get a similar type of player, or whenever they're in free agency, get a similar type of player? Because if we're being realistic, we're not going to make the playoffs this year. I know that Chris Woodward says we're trying to win every single game. Chris Young says we're trying to compete as well. But the chances are the Mariners look really good. The Astros look really good. We're just not going to make the playoffs this year. So we need to think about our situation. What prospects do we have right now that could actually help us in the future? And then could we get a similar pitcher to Frankie Montas in free agency next year? I think you could. Mike Clevenger, maybe a rebound in Noah Syndergaard, or Jamison Taillon. I think those guys are out there. You've shown you can do it in the past with Mike Minor, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, John Gray, etc. Obviously, Luis Castillo I think is better. On a good rotation, Castillo is probably a 1 or 2. Frankie Montas is a 2 or 3. So Carlos Rendon would be out there. You could look at trades, because I think Castillo's an ace. Frankie Montas not quite an ace yet, but Carlos Rendon could be out there. I don't know if you should spend the money on him. I think you should probably just wait to get an ace from your young guys, see if they develop into an ace. Maybe not try to rush us into a situation to where we're not actually there yet. But let me know what you think in the comments section down below. If you do want the Texas Rangers to trade for Luis Castillo or Frankie Montas, please give this video a thumbs up. Thanks for making it to the very end of the video. If you want to see an alternative to what the Rangers could do for a starting pitcher, then click this video right here for a trade on Pablo Lopez. And here's a video I think that you would possibly like.